Now, if you would have told me I would have been reviewing a 4K of Friday the 13th this year, I would have been like, yeah, of course, it's part 2. Thankfully, that's happening. But if you would have told me instead, Christian, you're going to review the 4K of the 2009 remake, much less from Arrow Video this year, I would have looked at you like you had 3 eyes. But luckily, Arrow Video did it. Today we're reviewing Friday the 13th, 2009 on 4K UHD from Arrow. And this has the distinction of being the second Friday the 13th film to ever hit 4K. What a weird world we're living in, but a pretty cool one if you ask me. Now, before we dive into this, I just want to say this. I did get this early, but I want you all to know this is not a paid review. I bought this movie. I just happened to get it really early. So I don't think it matters to most of you guys, but I want it to be very clear. This is not a sponsored or paid review, so I have zero reason to lie about anything. Now, the thing about this 4K was it was announced a few months ago from Arrow Video to a huge shock to most of us. But we did learn that we were going to get both the theatrical and the director's or / killer cut, if you will, of the movie on 4K. Now, another thing that people talked about that was kind of a bummer was the fact that this has no Blu-rays in it whatsoever. You get 2 discs in this release. You get the killer cut on 4K, and you get the theatrical cut on 4K. A lot of people were wondering why is that the case. From what I know now, and from the discussions I've had with Cliff McMillan, who now works at Arrow Video, the licenses to get movies like this are extremely specific. The big companies like Warner Brothers, they have a Blu-ray out for this movie, and they don't see a need to have another company put their own Blu-ray out because they would feel like that would be some sort of competition. So putting this out on a 4K format, which means that it's not biting away from the competition of the people that just want the film on Blu-ray, is a way for them to be able to do that sort of thing. It gets really tricky, but from what I understand, that's the reason. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is, of course, the picture quality. I watched the killer cut of the movie because I feel like probably 9 out of 10 people, maybe even 10 out of 10 people, when they get this, they're going to watch the killer cut. You know, it's got a little bit more extended scenes and a little bit more gore. Not that the theatrical cut is bad or anything, but it's just seemingly known that most people are going to watch the killer cut. First thing I'll say is, of course, that is seamless, as well as the theatrical cut is seamless as well. I did breeze through the theatrical cut to make sure there was nothing iffy about it throughout it. Of course, there's not, but I just wanted to be sure. So let's get into it. How does this movie look on 4K? I know that's the big question everybody's ready to hear about. Well, I want to answer it by giving you 2 examples of movies that I would compare it to picture quality-wise. Now, the first one is the Dawn of the Dead 4K remake from Scream Factory. Now, if you're a fan of this channel, you've heard me talk very highly about this 4K and how it's really one of Scream Factory's sleeper 4K scans. This movie looks so good, and it shocked me because during this time with the transition into digital film and things like that, I just anticipated this stuff not looking that good, but this movie looked sensational. And another movie that I would compare it to actually came from Arrow Video as well, and that's The Last House on the Left 2009-2008 remake. This looked really good. But to get more specific about this 4K, because I don't want to just give you 2 comparisons and say that's how it looks. So the first thing about this movie is you're probably a fan of this film, or at least have seen this film a number of times in your life. And the first thing I'll say is, obviously this movie doesn't look very filmic. It looks like a digital movie. That's not necessarily a problem because that's the way most movies look during this time. But here's the thing that makes this so good. I'm not going to say that I predicted this, but I feel like I was right about this. I did say that this movie would be a way for you to be able to reevaluate the film and watch it with a lot more definition and clarity throughout the nighttime scenes. And I'm extremely happy to report that the Friday the 13th 2009 4K from Arrow does exactly that. The first thing you'll notice when watching this movie, as soon as we pan down into our new group of kids after the Mrs. Voorhees scene in the beginning, is you're going to see a great level of clarity with the kids. When that camera pans down and we see our initial group of kids coming into Camp Crystal Lake, you can really see how much depth there is in the actual woods, and there's a level of clarity that I can equate it to this, especially when we're talking about movies coming to 4K from the mid to late 2000s. Pretend you're watching this movie on YouTube and you're watching it on 480p. In essence, the Blu-ray release or the DVD release of this movie. And then you realize, oh wait, I'm on 480p, and then you snap it to 1080, and as you're watching it, boom, you get that nice sense of clarity. There's this beautiful definition to everything. That's what watching this 4K is like. It doesn't transform it into film, but I don't think anybody was really expecting it to look like film so much. And what I really love about this release, the level of clarity in the dark scenes. You know, in the DVD releases and even the Blu-ray releases, when we see the one guy that's listening to Sister Christian going to look for his pot, you really have to kind of squint your eyes to make sense of what's going on. This absolutely alleviates that tenfold. All that stuff has much more definition. You can see the outlines of all the bushes as he's walking through. And what's really great is you can really get a sense of what Jason looked like in that potato sack during that scene where he turns around and sees Jason. Boom, there he is. I even paused it at that point. And it was so cool seeing all the refined detail of his suit, the ruffles in the mask and everything. So all the nighttime stuff in this looks sensational, which I think is really the biggest thing people are probably hoping from this 4K. You know, I don't think anybody was expecting this to just magically turn into something that looked like it was shot on 35. But what I think they were hoping for was clarity. Being able to understand things more, being able to understand the dark scenes more. One of the scenes where I really was able to see like, wow, this is like, there was a lot put into this movie that you couldn't really detail earlier in the old releases. When we see Jason's prisoner, the sister of Jared Padalecki, in those underground catacombs, feel free to pause it right there. When you get that overview shot of her chained up by the cage and you look and you can see all the machinery and all the stuff that's down in there, pause it and you'd be surprised at the things you'll see in there and all the detail that was put into that set that you may not have noticed before because of the picture quality of the Blu-ray and DVD releases. So when it comes to the picture, guys, you're going to experience this movie for the first time like you never really have before, and I'm not going to say it's going to change your mind about the movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm not that jaded. Yes, I'm a big fan of this remake. It's my favorite of the big four remakes, Halloween, Elm Street, Friday, and Texas Chainsaw. It is my favorite, but I'm not jaded to think you're going to magically change your mind. But what I will say is you'll be able to get a new perspective on the film, being able to see it with a level of detail and clarity that this 4K, that Arrow has. I mean, there's so much clarity to the nighttime scenes, and I put this up against the hardest test, guys. Now, this may sound a little silly, but I wanted to do this where all bets were off. I watched this with the windows open in broad daylight outside with lights shining in the house, everything fighting against the TV, because of course, watching this at night in a pitch black room, I can't wait to do that. I mean, that's going to be an incredible experience. But I think the difficult test that I wanted to put this up against is the way some people watch movies like this is sometimes they'll watch them in the daytime. Sometimes they're in a brightly lit room. Sometimes their windows are open and you can have the light shining in. That's going to fight against not only the TV, but the picture quality of a film specifically like this. And I can gladly say against those conditions, it got the big thumbs up. So I watched this in the roughest of conditions for watching a movie that has those problems. Now, the audio is the 5.1 per usual, but I mean, it sounded really good. I understand there'll be people that probably want the Dolby for this, and I understand, but I mean, the 5.1 did rock the house, especially when Sister Christian kicked in, which is one of my favorite songs. Let's talk about the special features on this, because this was what I was truly excited about. And I will say this, the bulk of the special features, the majority of the things you want will be on the theatrical 4K disc. So if you want to watch the special features first, take that theatrical disc and throw that in your player immediately. But let's talk about a few things that are on here. On disc 1, guys, you'll see right here, brand new audio commentary by director Marcus Nispel. So I listened to about 20 minutes of that before I had to leave, and very informative. He's on target. He's talking about the film, and it's enjoyable listening to him. There was things that I'm going to talk about with the interview. I'm not going to spoil too much about it because I actually want you guys to watch the interviews and hear these things for the first time, but there is one thing I'll mention that I find interesting. So the commentary with Marcus that I was listening to for the 20 minutes, I was enjoying it for sure. We have an audio commentary with writers Mark Swift and Damian Shannon, who they're always great to listen to. A brand new interview with director Marcus Nispel. So guys, I'm actually going to keep that interview spoiler free because Marcus talked about a lot of things that gave me clarity on the production and the making of the film. Here's the one thing I will allude to that I found very interesting. There's been this long-standing thing I've heard that Marcus Nispel was checked out of Friday the 13th. He loved doing Texas Chainsaw, but when he was doing Friday, he was just out of it. He either didn't like the project or decided that it was just something that he gave up on because of issues. That doesn't seem to be the case. Marcus said this, and there's a lot of things he talked about that I'm not going to mention in here, but I will say this. Marcus alluded to in the beginning of the movie, that crew of kids that we have, there was one girl that was supposed to take her top off initially, and she ended up refusing to do it. That caused a huge problem. She ended up leaving the set, and they lost like a week's worth of filming. So Marcus was up against the gun the entire rest of the movie. And he even said that he didn't even need for the girl to be topless, but the producers and everybody was like, no, we need that scene. So obviously that girl was replaced. We got the girl in here who's gorgeous to do that part where she's putting the oil on her boobs and everything. But my point is, he described how he lost so much time on the movie because they had to recast, they had to refilm everything that they had already done with that initial girl, so he was up against the gun the whole time. So I found that very interesting, but everything else about this interview, I'll keep it spoiler-free because he did talk about a lot of new things. All right, we also have a new interview with Mark Swift and Damian Shannon. Again, extremely informative. These guys are also involved with previous Friday the 13th films like Freddy vs. Jason. I won't spoil anything about their interview, but you'll learn a lot, and it was a good length. Both of those interviews so far had a great length to them. You really have to sit there and just absorb it because it's not a 5-10 minute interview with either of these guys. We have a brand new interview with cinematographer Daniel Pearl. Again, another good interview. I really enjoyed that. A Killer New Beginning, an exclusive video essay about why horror fans shouldn't fear remakes, what 2009's Friday the 13th remake gets right, and why the film serves as a perfect template for future franchise remakes by film critic Matt Donato. I enjoyed this a lot, and it was really informative for me as well. So again, a great feature. I really enjoyed that one. Excerpts from the Terror Trivia Track, The Rebirth of Jason Voorhees archival featurette, Hacking Back, Slashing Forward archival featurette, The 7 Best Kills, Deleted Scenes, Original Teaser Trailer, TV Spots, Electronic Press Kit, and Image Gallery. So great features on there. I think they did a fantastic job, and I can't wait for you guys to enjoy those interviews, especially the Marcus one, because I did learn a lot. I really, and I like Marcus. I think a lot of us do. He's done some great stuff like Texas Chainsaw as well, so I think you guys are really going to dig that. Okay, so on disc 2, the Killer Cut, obviously it's the uncut version of the movie, but what they do have on there is the brand new audio commentary with critics Alexandria Heller Nicholas, and Josh Nelson. And admittedly, I have not had time to listen to that yet, and no disrespect to them, but I don't think that's going to be the highest thing on the priority list for most of you guys watching this review. All right, so now that we've talked about the picture quality, we've talked about the special features, let's look at the actual release. Let me give you guys a nice bird's eye view. I think that artwork is really good, and I imagine a lot of you guys will like that. The spine has Friday the 13th on there. The back obviously shows the special features like we talked about. There is a little bit of a gloss feel on Jason's left hockey mask, which is a nice touch, but it's a matte black finish, which I'm a fan of matte black. I've talked about this before. I feel like most people like the glossy, but I like the matte black. Obviously, your art is the same on here, but obviously, if you want to reverse this, we can, and we'll do that. We'll get you guys to see what that looks like. It's just so weird seeing Friday the 13th, the remake, with that arrow rainbow at the bottom. Doesn't this just look... It almost looks like it shouldn't be real, but it's real. It's real. Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. There's actually a plethora of stuff in here. Well, let me show you the discs. Obviously, the discs come like this, which is a nice touch. You got the flap. I'm always a big fan of the flap. Both discs look identical. One just says the Killer Cut. One says the theatrical cut. And again, theatrical cut has all those special features. Okay, so the first thing we have in here is this Metallo card, which is basically a promo code for an online streaming service. Who cares about that? We just talked about this on a Halloween video I did. They actually gave us a Crystal Lake postcard. So... there it is. You got another postcard. I'm going to do that Halloween giveaway one, but yeah, we all get a postcard, but this one, guys, nice touch. Really like that. I forgot about this, but guess what? We do get a poster, and I got to say, I want to hang this up in here, but the reality is I like this art so much, I think I'm going to hang up the new artwork. I love it. But of course, on the opposite side, we get the classic. And last but certainly not least, we get the Crystal Lake Memories companion book about the movie, which is really cool. Pictures about the movie, and there's a little bit of the stuff written by Matt Konopka about the movie. Really cool book. Obviously, I won't spoil too much of the book and go through everything because I want some of this to be new for you guys, but there's a lot of cool information here. I plan on finishing reading this, and there's my boy Jared Padalecki. So, I mean, there was a few people wondering why they didn't do like a chunky box release of this. I can't imagine that Arrow did not want to do that for this film. I think the reality is when it comes to the license for these films, the way that they get the license to do these literally get as specific as down to the actual packaging. And I think that's just the reality because Nobody at Arrow Video, nobody wouldn't think to do a chunky box would be the coolest thing ever. I think this is just the way they were able to do it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am, but I think that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But here's what I'm going to say, guys. Listen, I understand I am a super fan, and that's probably why I come across so giddy with this, but I'm really excited for you guys to enjoy Friday 09 on 4K with me and to experience the film with the level of sharpness and detail that it had. And this is just really cool for Arrow to get this, and I really hope that you guys support this release. Again, I have no dog in this fight. This was not a paid review. I bought this, but this is Friday the 13th, 2009 on 4K. This is amazing to me. So I'm just so happy. I love this release. They did such a good job. And even if you're not a super fan of the film, they have enough meat on the bone where I think you'll get your money's worth with the special features and the additives. So cheers to Arrow Video. I'm so glad you guys did this. I'm so happy with the artwork. I'm truly happy with this release. Thank you guys for watching this, and enjoy Friday the 13th, 2009 on 4K UHD. Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.